going to take a roll today. Let's see, 941. Okay, so we're starting Henry IV Part 1 or the first part of Henry IV, whichever way you want to understand it today. And just a couple of background comments, not really much. This play is preceded by Richard II. Then you have 1 Henry IV, 2 Henry IV, and Henry V. Now, again, this tetralogy is recounting events that occurred before the previous tetralogy. The Henry VI and Richard III plays were written first. This one was written second, but it encompasses history dating from essentially 1399 to right around 1413, I think is the correct date, when Henry V becomes Henry V. Okay? Though, I should take that back. It is 1415. Because 1415 is the date of the Battle of Agincourt, which is what we see in Henry V. I think we're reading Henry V, if I keep us on track. So, very, very brief background. Have any of you read Richard II before or seen it? Okay. And I need to bring you up to speed. Richard II was a youngish, profligate, and this is all according to Shakespeare's portrayal. I'm not saying in real history. A young, profligate, flattery-loving king. Okay? So, he had a lot of hangers-on at court, and those hangers-on at court buttered him up, okay? So that he patronized them in the literal meaning of the word. He gave them wealth, he gave them standing, he gave them titles and such. And the more he did that, the more they praised him. Okay? When I say he was prodigal, not prodigal as in the prodigal son, prodigal in the sense of generous. Okay? He gave away lots of money, and he spent, like the prodigal son, foolishly. Okay? What else? He got involved in foolish wars against Ireland. All English monarchs essentially do, and they all rue the day that they did. So that when we get towards the end of the play, well, let me back up. Early on in the play, he banishes 2 people. Okay? He banishes the Dukes of Norfolk and Hereford. Okay? And he does so because they've accused each other of being traitors, and they accuse each other of being responsible for the death of Richard's brother, I believe. Okay? It's been a couple years since I've taught that. Now, when he banishes them, he doesn't give them the same banishment. Because the Duke of Hereford is the son of a name we've seen before, John of Gaunt, Duke of Lancaster. Okay? Norfolk's not. And why is this important? Because John of Gaunt, after the banishment ceremony, said he two want to fight early on in the play. And they challenge each other. They throw the gauntlet down literally, which means not only throwing the gauntlet down, but then, slapping somebody else across the face often. And so they, offer to fight. And he says, okay, we'll meet on such and such a day, and you can have your joust then. That day comes. They get ready to joust, and Richard calls it off. He says, here's what we're going to do. I'm going to banish you. Norfolk, he banishes for life. He banishes from England. Norfolk says, better kill me now, because banishing me from England is killing me. You remove from me the ability to use my native tongue, Norfolk says. So you might as well just kill me now. But he doesn't. He banishes them. He banishes Hereford for 10 years. Because he doesn't think Hereford is guilty of what Norfolk accuses him of. Okay? And then he speaks with John of Gaunt. And John of Gaunt's got tears in his eyes. John of Gaunt's old and dying. And because of that, Richard says, okay, I'll lessen your son's banishment. And he lessens it from 10 years to 6 years. I think it is 6 or 7. Okay? But he also says, while you are in banishment, you can never have any kind of conversation. You can't exchange letters, you can't meet, etc., etc. And he does that for a specific reason. He's afraid they'll plot against him. Okay? So, they get banished, they leave, etc., etc. Now, the Duke of Hereford, his name is Henry, looks like it's pronounced Bolingbroke, but it's pronounced Bolingbroke. Bolingbroke. Okay? So, midway through the play, Bolingbroke shows up. He comes back. Why? Well, his father, John of Gaunt, dies. See, when Bolingbroke is banished, he's banished as what? Henry Bolingbroke, Duke of Hereford. When he comes back as Henry Bolingbroke, Duke of Lancaster. That is, he's claiming his title. Well, in the meantime, after John of Gaunt dies, Richard II, to fill up his coffers, his treasury, he takes all the property, all the land, all the wealth of John of Gaunt. Word reaches Bolingbroke in exile, and he's like, he legally can't do that. He is distitling me. I'm going to go back. I'm going to get my title back. But he does it before the banishment term is out. And when he lands back in England, he starts to get a following rather quickly. And all these lords run to his aid and such. By the end of the play, they swear fealty to him. He shows up against Richard, and Richard agrees to abdicate. He steps down from the throne. Okay? And the play, largely, or take it back, not largely, has as one of its kind of running themes this medieval notion of passive obedience, which we talked about a little bit from the introduction to Richard III. That's the notion that kings must be obeyed, no matter how bad they are. Because even if the king is really, really bad, and I don't mean bad incompetent, I mean bad evil, corrupt, right? That might be because God has chosen that king to be a scourge, to be a judge, so to speak, or to bring judgment upon the people. So, what the play is suggesting is even if you have a really bad king like Richard, who is self-absorbed. I mean, Richard's a classic definition of a narcissist. If you praise him, if you make him feel good about himself, he'll give you what you want. Okay? Bolingbroke isn't. Bolingbroke's kind of a rough and tumble, crude, rough around the edges. I mean, I used this analogy the last time I taught this class. Some of the students liked it, some of it didn't. Do with it what you may. Richard's kind of like Obama. I don't mean narcissist. I mean wonderful speaker, erudite, intellectual. Read the introduction about him. That's exactly what it says. One of my professors, when I was working on my PhD, I could tell, just loved Richard because he was started teaching late 60s, early 70s when Nixon was around, and Bolingbroke was the Nixon, a now Trump type. Going to be an honest speaker, again, going to break some norms, etc., etc. Do with that, doesn't speak in perfectly good English, complete sentences. I don't think Trump knows what a complete sentence is. Okay, so you've got that going on. So Richard is deposed, and then he's killed. Bolingbroke says, now King Henry IV says, I didn't want him killed. And he is the guy who killed him executed. That's, my professor, like very Nixonian, Machiavellian, silence those who help you, etc., etc. So this play opens shortly after Henry IV has been made king. Okay? There's not peace throughout the land. There's still echoes of civil war. There are still some people who don't like Henry, but not many. See, the way Shakespeare portrays it, when Bolingbroke came in, he had, and this is one of the things that really jars Richard, he had the love of the people. And he had that because of how he treated the people. He would literally get down off his horse and speak to the charwoman. He would speak to the street sweeper. And we get scenes of, these lower status members of society talking about him and comparing him to Richard II, who wouldn't spend the time of day, wouldn't give you the time of day. Okay? He wouldn't speak to anybody lower than his level. So bear all that in mind as this play opens. Okay? Now, one other thing about this play. First part of Henry IV. Shakespeare introduces here one of his most beloved characters. It's not Henry IV, and it's not Prince Hal. It's Falstaff. The character of Sir John Falstaff. Okay? There's anecdotal evidence that when Queen Elizabeth saw this, the first one, she so fell in love with the character of Sir John Falstaff that she asked Shakespeare to write a play focusing on him. Anecdotal evidence. Okay? I don't believe there's a written letter. Take that back. There's not a written letter that says this. There is, anecdotally, that is, there are written accounts that suggest this. And Shakespeare turns around and writes the Merry Wives of Windsor. As a result, because the Merry Wives of Windsor has as its protagonist, it's a comedy, John Falstaff, who's trying to get in and out of the beds of Merry Wives of Windsor, of many different wives of Windsor. Okay? So Falstaff serves for comic relief, which, if you read the play carefully, I don't think this works out perfectly, symmetrically, but it's almost serious scene, comic scene. Serious scene, comic scene. It's almost perfect that way. And the comic scenes, all of them, have Falstaff. Why? Because Falstaff, you've got one of the principal characters in here is Prince Hal, also called Harry. Well, Falstaff's Hal's kind of torn in two directions. He's got his father / king on one side, and you've got Falstaff on the other side. Okay? Think of the old Warner Brothers cartoons, Bugs Bunny and such. Little evil demon on one shoulder, little angel with the halo on the other shoulder. It's kind of how it is. And Falstaff is kind of the evil demon, but he's not evil. There's nothing evil about Falstaff. Falstaff just doesn't take anything in life seriously. The king does. Why does the king take life seriously? Because he's the king. And everything ultimately falls to him. So, let's open Act 1, Scene 1. We're hoping to get through Act 3 today. Jordan already knows where that's going. And it's, 10 o'clock already. So the king begins. So shaken as we are, so wan with care. What does wan mean?
Weary, maybe?
Pale. Pale, worn out. Find we a time for frighted peace to pant, catching their breath, and breathe short-winded accents of new broils to be commenced in strands far remote. That is, we're going to take this brief respite, and we're going to plan what? New broils, new wars, in strands, shores, far remote, foreign lands. He's going to tell us what wars he's thinking about. No more the thirsty entrance of this soil shall daub her lips with her own children's blood. No more shall trenching war channel her fields, nor bruise her flowers with the armored hoofs of hostile paces. That is, civil war will stop. Those opposed eyes, that is, those who oppose me, which like the meteors of a troubled heaven, all of one nature, of one substance bred, did lately meet in the intestine shock, in furious clothes of civil butchery, shall now in mutual well-beseeming ranks march all one way, and be no more opposed against acquaintance, kindred, and allies. Those who before opposed me will now what? We will all march in the same direction. We're all part of one team, if we were using modern business terminology. So, therefore, friends, as far as to the sepulchre of Christ, whose soldier now, under whose blessed cross we are impressed and engaged to fight, forthwith the power of English shall we levy. We're going to do what? We're going to go on a crusade. We're going to leave war in England behind, or no more will English blood be shed on English. We're going to go do what? We're going to fight for Christ. Under the sign of Christ, the Red Cross. Whose arms were molded in their mother's womb, that is the English, to chase these pagans in these holy fields, over whose acres walked those blessed feet 1,400 years ago were nailed for our advantage, blah, 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 blah. Okay? So, he addresses one of the lords, Westmoreland. Where is he listed? He's just listed Westmoreland, who's a relation to the king. I don't remember what it is exactly, cousin or something like that. So, he says, line 28, but this our purpose now is 12-month old. It's been 1 year since he's been crowned king. He's saying, I intended this almost from the moment the crown was put on my head. But a year has gone by and they haven't done it yet. And bootless 'tis to tell you we will go. Bootless. Rewardless. It won't produce anything. What's he mean? We're not going. Therefore, we meet not now. We're not meeting to discuss our plans to go on crusade. Why are we meeting? Oh, there's Westmoreland. Let him speak. Let me hear of you, my gentle cousin Westmoreland, what yesternight our council did decree in forwarding this dear expedience. And he says, a post from Wales, loaden with heavy news, line 37, whose worst was that the noble Mortimer, leading the men of Herefordshire to fight against the irregular and wild Glendower, was by the rude hands of that Welshman taken, 1,000 of his people butchered. Okay, so Worcester, turn to the dramatis personae, that's how it's pronounced, by the way, it's not Worcester. Worcester was Northumberland's younger brother. Okay, Northumberland is Henry Percy, He has a son named Harry Percy. His real name is Henry Percy also. Okay. Mortimer, Worcester, is Northumberland's younger brother, so he's the uncle of Harry Percy. Okay. Sorry, that's Worcester. Lord Mortimer, Edmund Mortimer, is also referred to as the Earl of March. Okay. So back up for a second. Mortimer has been taken captive by Glendower. Glendower is a famous captain, leader, general, whatever you want to call him, in Welsh history. Okay? He was, according to the stories about him, he was a magician, not modern day, but practiced magic, dark arts, okay? Not somebody to be trifled with. So, Mortimer, we hear, leads his men against Glendower, and Glendower captures him and slaughters 1,000 of Mortimer's men. So why is Mortimer leading his men against Wales? Well, Herefordshire is on the border of Wales. If you know anything of English history, the quote-unquote English are always fighting border skirmishes with the Welsh. One of the reasons is because the English call them the Welsh. Very names, Wales and Welsh, mean foreigner, exile. The Welsh don't call themselves the Welsh. They're the Cymry. It's either Cymry or, I can never remember, Cymru. That's their native Gaelic tongue. I intentionally did not say Welsh tongue, okay? They don't like being called Welsh. So, the king says, okay then, we're going to put the crusade on hold. So Westmoreland comes back. He says, oh, there's other news. It came from the north. So, the king's down here, southeast England. So, this, first of all, is news from the west, trouble in Wales, trouble in the borderlands. Also, there's news from the north. On Holy Rood Day, the gallant Hotspur there, that's probably September 14th, which is the exaltation of the Holy Cross. On Holy Rood Day, the gallant Hotspur there, young Harry Percy, brave Archibald, the ever-valiant approved Scot, at Holmdon met where they did spend a sad and bloody hour, as by discharge of their artillery in shape of likelihood the news was told, that as you heard. Okay. So, Hotspur fights Archibald. But he doesn't tell us what's the outcome. So the king says, Blunt, you've got word. Blunt comes forward. Okay, he's not going to speak, but the king says, line 67, the Earl of Douglas is discomfited. If you're comforted, it means you're comfortable, you have a place. Discomfited means you're uncomfortable, you've lost your place. He's saying he's been unhorsed, been captured. Who else? 10,000 bold Scots, 22 knights, balked in their own blood, did Sir Walter see on Holmdon's plains. Of prisoners, Hotspur took Mordake, Earl of Fife, eldest son to Douglas, and the Earl of Athol, of Murray, Angus, and Menteith. So he took Hotspur, took Douglas, okay? He took Mordake, Earl of Fife, and eldest son of Douglas. He also took the Earl of Athol, the Earl of Murray, the Earl of Angus, and the Earl of Menteith. Is not this an honorable spoil? In other words, man, Hotspur, what a warrior. He took all these warriors. So they're all his prisoners. Westmoreland says, yep, worthy prize. It is a conquest for a prince to boast of. All right. This. Hotspur. equals Harry Percy, son of Henry Percy, also called Northumberland. Okay. Westmoreland says his victory in this battle is, worthy of a prince, and by doing so, he immediately compares and links Hotspur with King Henry's son, Prince Harry, or Prince Hal, Prince of Wales. How do we know that's what he's doing? Because how the king responds. I'm going to talk about Hotspur again in just a moment. There thou makest me sad, and makes me sin and envy that my Lord Northumberland should be the father to so blessed a son who's the theme of honor's tongue, amongst a grove the very straightest plant, who is sweet fortune's minion and her pride. So what has he just said about Hotspur?
Better than his kid.
He's better than, well, he's going to get to that. He's saying, I wish he was my son. Okay, by calling him Fortune's minion. What's a minion? Don't think Despicable Me. It's a plaything. Fortune plays. He's not saying Fortune down here at the bottom of her wheel. He's right up here. Okay? Everything's going great for Hotspur. The theme of honor's tongue. So if honor is personified, it can speak. What would honor speak about? Honor, a.k.a. Hotspur. What does the name Hotspur imply? Hot, spur, not necessarily spur like spurs you use when you're riding a horse, though it can have that. What does a spur do for a horse? When you kick it, makes it move. This is hot spur. It's quick movement. It's rash. It's impetuous. Okay? That's one of the distinctions about Hotspur. If the notion of honor is all implied, Hotspur's going to act, and he's going to act fast. He's going to get honor. He's going to get glory. Okay? Whilst I, by looking on the praise of him, Hotspur, see riot and dishonor stain the brow of my young Harry. Brow. Riot and dishonor sit on his brow like what? What should sit on his brow? Future king. A crown. Him? What's he mean by riot? Is there a clause there? 84. Debauchery. Nice, literarily for school textbooks approved term. What's meant by debauchery? Lasciviousness. There's another one that's kind of approved. Raunchy sex. That characterizes his son. There's little honor in debauchery. Oh, that it could be proved that some night-tripping fury had exchanged in cradle clothes our children where they lay. In other words, if somebody could prove that my Harry is a changeling, and my Harry belongs to Northumberland, and his Harry belongs to me, oh, I'd be happy, man. What's that implying about the ages of these two? They're similar. That's one of Shakespeare's innovations in this play. Shakespeare makes Harry Percy, Hotspur, the same age as Hal. Historically, Hotspur was 20 years older than Hal. Hotspur was old enough to be Hal's father. Why does he do that? Because he needs a good foil. He needs a good, not mirror, but a good character to help bring out Hal's character, Hal's virtues. Okay? So, honor, debauchery. Seemingly. Then what I have is hearing he mind, but let him from my thoughts. What think you cause of this young person's pride? What's he getting? What's the point he's getting to in talking about Hotspur? He's got all these prisoners, right? And these are, by the very fact that he names them, implies these are known heroic kind of people. These are known mighty warriors. And he does what? He tells me I'm not going to get but one of them. Mordick, the Earl of Fife. It's his uncle's teaching. This is Worcester. Westmoreland means Hotspur wouldn't do this if his uncle weren't whispering in his ear. Malevolent to you in all respects, etc., etc. And the king says, yeah, so I've sent for him. He's going to answer to me publicly. Scene, Act 1, Scene 2. So, Act 1, Scene 1 shows what's going on in the country.
A lot of war.
Okay, there are still battles going on. It's not necessarily civil war, but the king is ill at ease. All right? Act 1, Scene 2. It's all what? Essentially. It's farce. We leave the serious stuff. We leave the real men with their big boy pants on, solving, trying to find solution to deep matters of state, and we jump to. No, go away. We jump to what? Hal and Falstaff talking about inconsequential things. Falstaff, what time of day is it, Hal? Thou art so fat-witted with drinking of old sack and unbuttoning thee after supper, and sleeping upon benches after noon, you forgot to demand that truly which thou wouldst truly know. In other words, you don't know what it is you really want to know. What the devil hast thou to do with the time of day? Meaning, why do you care what time of day it is? What's Hal's implication? How does Falstaff spend his day? Eating, sleeping, drinking, winching. Pretty much, not necessarily in that order. Unless hours were cups of sack and minutes capons, clocks the tongues of bawds. He means literal, physical tongues. And dials the signs of leaping houses, whorehouses. And the blessed son himself a fair hot wench and flame-colored taffeta. I see no reason why you should be so superfluous to demand the time of day. The hours only mean to you cups of sack, that's cheap booze, tongues of hookers, dials, the signs of hookers' houses, and the sun, a wench in a flame-colored taffeta, that is, bright red. Why else would you be curious about hours? Okay. So they go back and forth, and I'm going to leave it. And we are introduced to not only Hal, but we also see pawns come in, line 109 and such. Okay. And others are referred to. And then they all leave. And we get our first soliloquy of the play. Oh, is it a doozy. And I encourage you to get on YouTube, and you can see several different actors give you kind of their version of this. Tom Hiddleston's is really good, because Tom Hiddleston did this for a BBC series called The Hollow Crown, thank you, which used to be available entirely on YouTube. And then they had to pull it, NBC Universal, I think, which actually owned the rights complained because I used to use it in my class. In fact, one time I was recording my class, I had it, and YouTube, after about a month or two, blocked it because I got a letter for a stupid college course. They got a letter from NBC Universal. They eventually, allowed me to continue using it after I said, blockheads, Fair use, copyright. Look it up. So, here's his little soliloquy. I know you all, and will a while uphold the unyoked humor of your idleness. I know you all. I understand you. I plumb the depths of you. And for a while I will uphold the unyoked, unbridled, uncontained, unconstrained humor, that is, mentality, attitude of your idleness. Idleness, uselessness, not having anything serious to do in life. Yet herein will I imitate the sun, who doth permit the base contagious clouds to smother up his beauty from the world, that when he please again to be himself, being wanted, he may be more wondered at by breaking through the foul and ugly mists of vapors that did seem to strangle him. What did Hal just call false F19? And included in that are Pito and Bartle, who will be members of this group later. They are the foul and ugly mists and vapors that do what? That seem to strangle him. What's the him? Hal. Who is Hal in this metaphor? The sun. So what's he telling us? My involvement with these fellows, it's all an act. He says, I'm like the sun. And what happens to the sun sometimes? Hasn't happened much around here recently.
It goes down.
It's not that it goes down.
It's covered by clouds.
It gets covered by clouds. Because the sun normally is what? Can you look at it? No, it's shining brightly. He's saying, I'm like the sun. Only now I'm strangled by these vapors, clouds, etc. If all the year were playing holidays, to sport would be as tedious as to work. That is, if you didn't have a job, if all you did was party, then partying would become as boring as work. If that's all you did every day, day in and day out, you'd get tired of that. But when they seldom come, but when vacations seldom come, what? They wished for come. That is, you've been looking forward to them. And when they hardly ever come, when they come, you really want them. You really want them to come on time. And nothing pleaseth but rare accidents. Look at your little gloss. Rare accidents. Rare events. What's he referring to? Nothing pleases but rare events or accidents.
Minutia of day-to-day is kind of boring, but when it's something different's happening, that's what...
Something new, something exciting. Okay? He probably has in mind... Does it follow? No, it's not. He probably has in mind something like when something extremely out of the ordinary happens. Like, I don't know, a comet. Back then, comets were, when one happened, it was amazing. We have written accounts of, for example, Halley's Comet, when it came in the late 16th, early 17th century. And it was a lot brighter than when it came in 1986. 1986, it was a real letdown, because it was like the eraser on a pencil. Whereas in the 17th and 16th centuries, it was described as being like the moon in brightness with a tail that stretched across the sky. That would have been Pretty awesome, right? That's what he means. Okay? So what? What does the so mean? I'm going to be like the rare accident. I'm going to be like the sun bursting forth from the clouds. So when this loose behavior I throw off, loose, well, let's use his father's term, this riot, this debauchery. When I throw this off and pay the debt, I never promise it. What's that debt? I gotta be king. I never agreed to this. Because what does every eldest son to a monarch in England, what is that person born into? Prince of Wales. It's not like you reach the age of 12, like if you're Catholic, and you go through, or 7 or whatever the age is, you go through confirmation. He didn't go through princely confirmation. That happened when he was born. When I throw this off and pay the debt I never promised it, by how much better than my word I am, by so much shall I falsify men's hopes. He's saying, I will be so much better than my word that I'm talking about right now. By how much better I am than my word, so I will falsify men's hopes before then. How's he going to falsify? Make false their hopes before then.
Just setting the bar really low.
Loose behavior. They're going to think so little of me that they're going to think there is no way he will ever amount to anything. A lot of people said, and I don't always bring politics, but this is a pretty good example, I think. A lot of people said, and we're not going to talk, go much farther than this. A lot of people said, after Trump got elected, oh, watch, he's going to change now. Because he said during the election season, I'm going to be so presidential, you've never seen a president that's going to be a president like me. In other words, great words, right? Great promise, like Hal says here. But didn't happen. Okay? Hal saying, I'm going to so make low their hopes that when I really do it, what's going to occur? People's heads are going to explode. They're going to think, well, this can't be the same person. And like bright metal on a sullen ground, my reformation, my reformation, my recreation will what? Glittering o'er my fault. Glittering, shining brightly, shall show more goodly and attract more eyes than that which hath no foil to set it off. He's saying, even if I then had somebody standing beside me, people will be attracted to me. They're going to look at me. And he sums up, I'll so offend. To make offense a skill. Skill there means an art form. I'm going to raise being offensive to an art form. That's pretty what? What's he really getting at? What's the whole point of this soliloquy? He's telling us two things. One is now, the second is then. What's he saying about now and his riot? It's all what?
Facade.
It's all a facade. Then will be reality. So when he begins, I know you all. He says, I know the you all refers specifically to Falstaff and Pons, and probably Pito and Bardolph. But nobody knows him. seemingly nobody knows him because he's putting on an act. But then they're really going to know me. So what's this tell us about his character?
I mean, I guess he feels lonely.
Okay, possibly.
That's a good inference.
What else?
He's really calculating.
To put it mildly. I mean, he's got a PhD in Machiavellianism. He raises Machiavellian attitudes to an art form, as he puts it. And people talk about his father as being cold and calculating. So the king comes in, Act 1, Scene 3. With Northumberland, with Worcester, with Hotspur, with Blunt, and others. Okay. Why is it important that he comes in with all of these other characters? Well, Northumberland, Worcester, etc., not Hotspur, he was a little young, but he was involved. They're all the ones who helped him become king. So he comes in and says, my blood hath been too cold and temperate, and up to stir at these indignities, and you have found me, for accordingly you tread upon my patience. In other words, I haven't acted yet, but I'm getting impatient. I'm the king, and you're not listening. But be sure I will from henceforth rather be myself. From here on out, I will be Henry IV, and they know what that means. They know how effective he can be when it comes to putting down rebellion or dispatching of enemies. In the previous play, Richard II, Richard had some courtiers who disagreed with Henry Bolingbroke, and Henry Bolingbroke had them executed, though he lacked the legal power to do so. So he's kind of saying, remember, Worcester, well, let me finish, which hath been smooth as oil, here's what he means, I will henceforth rather be myself, mighty and to be feared, than my condition which hath been smooth as oil, soft as young down, and therefore lost that title of respect. He's been acting how? Apparently for a while. He hasn't been acting high and mighty. He says, I've wanted to get along. No more. Which the proud soul ne'er pays, but to the proud. In other words, because you aren't being reciprocal in your affection toward me, now you get the stern king. Worcester. Our house little deserves the scourge of greatness to be used on it. Our house, our family. Because Worcester, Northumberland, they're all related. And that same greatness to which our own hands have hoped to make so poorly. We're not used to the scourge of greatness, and how dare you threaten us when we made you king? Northumberland starts to speak. Worcester, get thee gone, for I do see. This is the king, because the king interrupts him. For I do see danger and disobedience in thine eye. In other words, you're plotting. Don't plot against me. Oh no, your presence is too bold and peremptory, and majesty might never yet endure the moody frontier of a servant brow. Moody, shifting moods I see in your forehead, in your face. So, leave. Okay? Worcester leaves. You were about to speak. In other words, you may speak now to Northumberland. And Northumberland says, don't blame my son for the prisoners. He's not holding them against you. And Hotspur comes forth. My liege, my lord, I didn't deny you any prisoners. I remember when the fight was done, I was dry with rage, and what happened. So, Hotspur gives us the context. I had just finished fighting all these people, and I captured these mighty warriors, and in comes some little toady political nothing. You know, we're told, line perfumed 36, perfumed like a milliner, twixt his finger and thumb, held a pouncet box, a snuff box, and he came and he said, you men smell. And did what? And he demanded, and he's like, like hell, I'm going to give my prisoners that I won with my arms, my bloody arms, to this, you fill in the blank. He demanded the rest in your majesty's behalf. 47. I then, all smarting with my wounds being cold, to be so pestered with a popinjay. Now, your gloss tells you parrot. That's the literal meaning of popinjay. What else does it mean? Describe a parrot's appearance. Colorful. This guy is dressed to the nines. What kind of person would he be in our government? First, talk about Falstaff. Falstaff's Hotspur. Hotspur is a general. He's talking about, we just won a major battle. I had not even yet cleaned off the scum of war. I'm dripping blood. I've got blood all over me. And this guy comes in dressed how? He is dressed like he's ready to go to a ball. And he said, the king says, send his prisoners. He says, out of my grief and impatience, I entered neglectingly. I know not. Look at the context, king. I don't know what I said. I was hot. I was tired. He made me mad to see him shine so brisk and smell so sweet and talk so like a waiting gentlewoman. He's implying this guy isn't man enough to go to war. Telling me blah, blah, blah. So he says, he concludes, I beseech you, 67, let not his report come current for an accusation betwixt my love and your high majesty. Don't let what some peon, some know-nothing, said come between us. Blunt's on the king's side. Blunt says, that's a good answer. I would do the same if I were Hotspur. Such a person, such a place, such a time. King. Look at the king's response. What's the second word? Yet. What does yet mean? Up to right now. Okay. I could accept what Hotspur just said. Then. But he's had time to clean up. He's had time to dress. He's had time to send those prisoners. Why yet he doth deny his prisoners, but with proviso and exception, that we at our own charge shall ransom straight. Proviso and exception, he will give me the prisoners he captured if I ransom Mortimer. If I pay the ransom to get him back. Who on my soul hath willfully betrayed the lives of those that he did lead to fight against that great magician, blah, 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 blah. Why? Whose daughter, as we hear, that Earl of March hath lately married. Mortimer, the Earl of March, same person, married Glendower's daughter. What's Henry suggesting? The king. Yeah. This was kind of set up this way. And what did he do? He betrayed all those men that died in that battle. Those 1,000 men. So, he says, shall we by treason and indent with fears when they have lost and forfeited themselves? No. He says, I'm not going to pay a penny to ransom home revolted Mortimer. Revolted. Mortimer revolted against me. And what happens with Hotspur? That's the match to the tinder. I mean, just sets him off. Okay? So the king finishes, next speech, send us your prisoners, or you will hear of it. Send us your prisoners, or else. And the king and Blunt leave Hotspur. And if the devil come and war for them, I will not send them. Come hell or high water, you ain't getting them. Northumberland, shh. Drunk with choler. If you read the introduction to the book, you read about the four humors. Choler was the humor that created anger. In other words, shh. Worcester comes back in, and Hotspur's still what? He's still going on about Mortimer. Okay? And he won't shut up about Mortimer. I mean, they just keep going back and forth. Northumberland. When Worcester says, I can't blame him. Why? Line 145. Was not he proclaimed, he, Mortimer, the Earl of March, was not he proclaimed by Richard that dead is the next of blood, meaning next in line for the throne? It was. I heard it. And then it was when the unhappy king, whose wrongs in us God pardon. Oops! Did set forth upon his Irish expedition. That is, Richard left England to go to war against Ireland. When he did, he said, should anything happen to me, Mortimer should be king after me. Why? Because Richard did not have a son. Hotspur's like, wait, what? Hadn't heard that before. My brother was to be king? Uh-huh. Well, then I can't blame Henry. I get it now. It all makes clear sense. I cannot blame his cousin king that wished him on the barren mountain starve. He wants to be done with Mortimer so that Mortimer can't claim the throne. But shall it be that you that set the crown upon the head of this forgetful man, and for his sake wear the detested blot of murderous subordination? You can almost skip the rest of the speech because he's just going to unload. He says, therefore I say, and Worcester's like, shh. Because what's his point? Of this proud king who studies day and night, line 184, to answer all the debt he owes to you, even with the bloody payment of your debts. Hotspur says, Henry's going to do what? He's going to hunt you down and kill you. Unless, what's he imply? Unless we do him first. So, Worcester, Hotspur, and Northumberland go back and forth. And we find out more about where Mortimer is and such. Okay. And we find a little bit out about some of the events in Richard II, about Bolingbroke when he returned. In line 246, he came back at Ravensburg, etc. Okay. So Worcester tells Hotspur, line 257. Once more to your Scottish prisoners, deliver them up without the ransom straight. Make the Douglas son your only mean for powers in Scotland. Okay? And then he tells Northumberland. So notice, Worcester's kind of the one calling the shots, making the plans. So he tells Hotspur, release your prisoners, keep the Douglas' son. Tells Northumberland, your son in Scotland being thus employed, you secretly into the bosom creep of that same noble prelate well beloved, the Archbishop, that's the Archbishop of York. What's he means? Creep into his bosom. Insinuate yourself into his circle and see if he will join us. Okay? So, their plot begins. And we get Act 2, Scene 1. And then 2-2. And what is happening in 2-1 through 2-2? It's the famous, subsequent to the play, Gad's Hill robbery scene. Okay? Because how do we see this open up? We see one, 2, 1.
Let's see where they talked about it.
1-3. 1-3 ends with Northumberland, Worcester, and Hotspur plotting, right? 2-1 and 2-2. 2-1 begins with plotting. Plotting for what? This robbery. Okay. So you have serious plotting at the end of Act 1. And then you have stupid plotting at the beginning of Act 2. Plotting a robbery. Well, what happens in this robbery? You have Falstaff and others set upon, and then they get set upon. Okay? They get robbed of what they had. And then we end with the end of 2-2. And throughout 2-2, what does Falstaff say happened to them? How many people did he fight off? Yeah, but does he start off with 100? Nope. He starts off with a few, and then he retells it, and it gets magnified. And then he retells it and gets magnified. And then what does Hal do? Lying sack of sack. It was only, what? Pawns, I think, in Hal. Says there weren't hundreds, it was just us. And he has the proof. He has Falstaff's purse, essentially. And Falstaff and them laugh about it. This is all funny. What did Hal say at the conclusion of his soliloquy? He said, I'm going to put on this act. Okay? So pick up with 2-3. Hotspur comes in, reading a letter. Okay? And his wife comes in. I'm going to skip him reading the letter. His wife comes in, Kate. And she asks, why are you alone? What does she mean, why are you alone? Next couple of lines. For what offense have I this fortnight been a banished woman from my Harry's bed? Why haven't you been sleeping with me, is what she's asking. Why are you, what, self-absorbed? Why are you so absorbed in something that you won't come to bed with me? A banished woman from my Harry's bed. Tell me, sweet Lord, what is it that takes from thee thy stomach? What's taken from his stomach? Pleasure. Well, what did King Henry say about him? He is the theme of Honor's tongue. What does he think honor involves at this point? Getting the kingship for his brother. What is it that takes from thee thy stomach pleasure and thy golden sleep? Why dost thou bend thine eyes upon the earth and start so often when thou sittest alone? What's her point? What's going on? Because he's alone means she not just hasn't seen him in bed, she hasn't seen him. When she does see him, he's jumpy. He's startled easily. Okay? She says, in thy faint slumbers, I by thee have watched. She sees him sleeping, and she hears him talking in his sleep, murmuring, courage to the field, etc., etc. And thou hast talked of sallies and retires, of trenches, tents, palisadoes, frontiers, parapets, basilisks, cannon, culverin, prisoners' ranks, all things of war and death. And a servant comes in. Does he even hear his wife? Because he addresses the servant and doesn't address her. But hear you, my lord. What sayest thou? In other words, huh? What is it carries you? Well, my horse. No. Out, you mad-headed ape. She says, I'll know your business, Harry. Line 80. That I will. I fear my brother Mortimer doth stir about his title. When Hotspur called him his brother-in-law. Mortimer is Hotspur's wife's brother. Okay? But if you go, and he says, so far afoot, I have to leave you. Come, answer me. What does she want? Okay, maybe sex. What does she want more than that?
Companionship?
Keep going.
For him to trust her?
What does she say marriage is? It's a two-way street. You got to be honest with me. You got to be open with me. She says, do you not love me? Do you not indeed? For since you love me not, I will not love myself. Do you not love me? Tell me. He says, whither I go, line 104. Go back to 103. I must not have you henceforth question me whither I go, nor reason whereabout. Whither I must, and to conclude, this evening must I leave you, gentle Kate. I know you wise, but yet no farther wise than Harry Percy's wife. Constant you are, but you're a woman. That's a little dig. Why? Renaissance period, women were thought to be inconstant, meaning unfaithful. Not just sexually, but with knowledge. And for secrecy, no lady closer, that is, and I don't think there's a woman on the world who could keep a secret as well as you could. For I well believe thou wilt not utter what thou dost not know. What is it he has to keep a secret from her? Yeah, we're plotting against the king. If you know, what can happen? Let's say she's not inconstant. Little word begins with tor and ends with chur.
That's torture.
That's torture. She says, how so far? Not an inch farther. But hark you, Kate, whither I go, whither shall you go to? Today will I set forth, tomorrow you. In other words, I'm going to bring you to where I am. Why? Because he's starting open rebellion. And he doesn't want to leave his wife behind. Okay? You want to hit somebody, you want to hit them really hard. You don't hit that person. You hit the people the person loves. Simple, strategy. So, 2-4. Pawns comes in with the prince and such. I'm going to skip a bunch. In fact, we're just going to skip. Let's see here. Yeah, we're going to skip. Go to the end of that scene where Hal and Falstaff put on a play of sorts. Shakespeare loves plays within plays. Why? Because it just gives him all kinds of stuff to work with. So this is a play within a play. What's the play? Falstaff is going to portray who? King Henry IV. Hal will portray Falstaff for part of it at least. Okay? And then it's going to reverse. So, beginning with 374. Well, Hal's going to be himself first. 370. Hal says, you stand for my father and examine me upon the particulars of my life. He says, okay. So, Falstaff and Hal come in, and Falstaff says to Hal. Falstaff says this to Hal as Hal. But Falstaff says this, okay, I'm the king now. Harry, 395, I do not only marvel where thou spendest thy time, but also how thou art accompanied. that thou art my son. I have partly thy mother's word, partly my own opinion, but chiefly a villainous trick of thine eye, and a foolish hanging of thy nether lip that doth warrant me. In other words, I'm not 100% sure that you're my son. Your mother said you were. What's he implying about his wife, by the way? But you look like me. There's that notion again. Sons should look like their fathers, etc., etc. But he says, here's the point. Why, if you are sent to me, art thou, 403, so pointed at? Shall the blessed Son of Heaven prove a mitcher and eat blackberries? Shall the Son of England prove a thief and take purses? I've heard about this robbery. There's a thing, Harry, which thou hast often heard of. It is known to many in our land by the name of pitch. This pitch, as ancient writers do report, doth defile. So doth the company thou keepest. The friends you have, they're like pitch. Once you touch it, you can't get it off. So, Falstaff, as Henry says, I've often noted in thy company a virtuous man. I don't know his name. What? Who? Oh, a goodly portly man. In faith, and a corpulent. Falstaff, who's ever portraying him, at the very least has to have either a body suit on so that he's fat, or needs to be fat. Very, very fat. Okay? He's 50 or so. Falstaff, that's his name. I see virtue in his looks, etc., etc. Okay. Tell me, where have you been the last month? The king, a.k.a. Falstaff, is saying, I haven't seen you for 30 days. Where have you been? Hal turns the tables. Dost thou speak like a king? No. Tell you what. You be Hal, and I'll be Henry IV. Okay? Let's try it that way. Depose me? That's dangerous language. Notice what Falstaff's not a dummy. Falstaff intellectually is very sharp. Okay? But that intellect is often dumbed down because of drink. Depose me? You're going to depose me? If thou dost it half so gravely, so majestically, both in word and matter, hang me up by the heels, etc., etc. Okay? Prince says, well, here I am set. That is, I'm now the king. Falstaff, and here I stand. Now, I think I referred to this once before here about Martin Luther, 1517, 1521, Gate of Worms. All the books are piled up. He apparently said, here I stand. Now, this could be Shakespeare alluding to that. Don't know if he is or not, but he uses the exact same phrase. Judge my masters. Where are you coming from, Harry? Eastcheap. That is, East Cheapside. Cheapside was a street in London at the time. Cheap doesn't mean inexpensive stuff. It means goods, products. Okay? By Shakespeare's day, it was the red light district. I'm coming from a whorehouse. The complaints I hear of thee are grievous. Splud, my lord, they're false. So, the prince goes on, says some pretty mean things, or unnice things. Falstaff says, there's no harm in this guy that you've heard about. And he finishes his speech talking about Jack Falstaff. Banish Peto, banish Bardolph, banish Pons. But for sweet Jack Falstaff, kind Jack Falstaff, true Jack Falstaff, valiant Jack Falstaff, and therefore more valiant being as he is, old Jack Falstaff, banish not him thy Harry's company. That is he saying, don't banish him from Harry's company, or don't banish Harry from his company. Because those mean two different things. Banish not him thy Harry's company. Banish plump Jack, and banish all the world. In a plump Jack, Falstaff is saying, as Harry, or as Hal, is all the world. You'll meet all kinds of people in Falstaff. Banish him, you'll banish all the world. The prince. I do, which is what tense? Present. He's saying this as Henry IV. I will. That's when. That's future. Shakespeare is foreshadowing for us an event that will occur in this play. Okay? Actually, take it back. The next play, Henry IV, Part 2. When Hal does have to banish Falstaff. Okay? So, leave the rest of that and pick up with 3-1, since we only have a few minutes left. Hotspur comes in again with Worcester and such. And where are they now? We're not in Northumberland. We're not in Scotland. We're in Wales. We're with Glendower's camp. There's Hotspur, there's Glendower, there's Mortimer and such. And Hotspur and Glendower start going at it kind of hammer and tongs. Why? What does Glendower say about himself and his birth and his abilities? You're smiling. The heavens lit up and the earth shook. Those would be taken as what?
Signs of like the second coming of Christ.
Okay, close. Omens of greatness. Okay. What does Hotspur say about them? What does he say about the earth shook? He says, yeah, his exact language is about line 26 and following. Oh, 25 or so. Oh, so the earth shook to see the heavens on fire, not in fear of your nativity. Disease of nature oftentimes breaks forth in strange eruptions off the teeming earth as with a kind of colic, pinched and vexed by the imprisoning of unruly wind within her womb, which for enlargement striving, shakes the old beldam earth and topples down. At your birth, our grandam earth, having this distemperature and passion shook. What's he mean by that? The earth passed gas. The earth farted when you were born. Powerful, ominous event to Mother Earth. Past you as well as gas. What's he just done to Glendower? What's he done to Glendower's sense of self-importance? He's challenged him. He's taken him down. So Glendower's like, I don't listen to this kind of speech of many men. Give me leave to tell you. So, listen to me now. I'm going to say it one more time. I am not like everyone else. I was born for great things, etc., etc. Okay? And Mortimer essentially has to say, shh, don't get him riled up. My father-in-law. Okay? So, they pull out the maps. They're going to divide the land. Putting the cart before the horse, chicken before the eggs, kind of a thing. What do they have to do before they can divide the land? Win. And what does Hotspur think about the division of the land? Lines 93 and following. My moiety, that is my portion, north from Burton here in quantity, equals not one of yours. No. Here's what I'll do. I'll take this, but I'm going to change the course of this river. And Glendower's like, no, you're not. Why does Shakespeare give us this scene? What's he showing? Division among the rebels. Well, they are rebels. They rebel. They're rebelling against each other. They can't even, unify in order to do this. Okay? So, they go back and forth. Mortimer says, 143 or so, "Fie, Percy, how you cross my father. I cannot choose. Sometimes he angers me with telling me the mold warp, blah, 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 blah." Okay? Mortimer, he's a worthy gentleman. And then Worcester comes in, finally, and says to Hotspur, "In faith, my lord, you are to willful blame, and since your coming hither, have done enough to put him quite besides his patience. You must needs learn, Lord, to amend this fault. Though sometimes it show greatness, courage, and blood, and that's the dearest grace it renders you. Oftentimes it doth present harsh rage, defect of manners, that is behavior, want of government, lack of," what's he mean by government?
Self-regulation.
Self-control. That's what Hotspur equals, lack of self-control. He cannot dial it down. If they had road rage, he would be the master of it. Pride, haughtiness, opinion, disdain, the least of which haunting a nobleman loseth men's hearts. Notice what Worcester is suggesting about nobility and noblemen. They should do what? They shouldn't lose men's hearts. They should gain. Their behavior, their entire demeanor should be such as it would attract people. Like Richard II, Henry Bolingbroke's was. He spoke to people on their level. He literally got down on their level. He treated the lowest of the low as well as he treated the highest of the high. It doesn't mean he treated the highest of the high as the low. He treated them as equal. And then he got the crown. And then he stopped. It leaves behind a stain upon the beauty of all parts beside. In other words, Hotspur, everyone would love you if you weren't so proud, haughty, blah, 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 blah. Well, I am schooled, because I think that's how you have to read that next line by Hotspur. Hotspur's going, "Oh, sorry. Good manners be your speed." Okay? So Kate comes in. We hear, Hotspur's, Mortimer's wife, singing Welsh and all that kind of stuff. We will pick up on whatever day it is, Tuesday, we might still finish on Tuesday, with Act 3, Scene 2. We might not, because this scene itself might take the entire class period. I don't think so, but it might. All right, have a good weekend.